Welcome back to another session of Understanding Human Anatomy and our discussion of the external features of the heart. In this first diagram, I'm going to draw in a posterior view of the heart. So I'm going to start that with a view of the left atrium, like so. And I'll clean up the drawing a little bit. Like so. And we'll have a little bit of superior vena cava and right atrium, and then a little bit of inferior vena cava joining with the right atrium. And let me close these over to show that they're cut. And I'm going to draw a little line in just to separate the vena cava from the right atrium and both the superior and inferior vena cava. Now, we're going to have the left ventricle visible, but its appearance is going to be distorted somewhat because it's projecting to the left but also into the plane of the screen. So I'm going to draw it like so. From this perspective, it makes it look somewhat smaller than it actually is. We're going to have projecting from the left ventricle the aorta, which starts out as an ascending aorta and then forms an aortic arch, like so. And I'll draw in the rest of the aorta here. And the aorta passes posterior to the apex of the heart, so we're going to see it covering up our view of the heart's apex. So we'll get the eraser out to do that, and we'll erase the line here between the aorta and the ventricle and draw in the base of the aorta separately. Projecting from the arch of the aorta are three vessels. The first one here that I'm drawing in is the brachiocephalic artery, and then we have the left common carotid artery, and finally the left subclavian artery. And we'll do some cleaning up here as well. And we'll also have the pulmonary trunk and the pulmonary arteries. We'll see the pulmonary trunk, which is running in this direction, and then it will divide into a right pulmonary artery and a left pulmonary artery, and the left pulmonary artery passes anterior to the aorta. So again, let me clean this up. Need to get the eraser out and erase here, erase here, and erase there. Like so. And then we have a structure running from the arch of the aorta down to the pulmonary trunk. It's a ligamentous structure. It's called the Ligamentum Arteriosum. And it's a remnant of a fetal structure called the ductus arteriosus. Then we have 4 pulmonary veins opening into the left atrium. Let me get the eraser to touch up again. And do a little more touching up. Okay. Now let's color the diagram in so that we have a little bit better view of what's going on. Remember from the previous video that I colored the atria pink. So we have pink in the right atrium as well as the left. And now we'll color the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava blue. We colored the ventricle brown. Need to close over the aorta here. We color the aorta red, and we colored the pulmonary trunk and pulmonary arteries a purple color. And I'm going to color in the pulmonary veins also red, but a little bit lighter shade than I did use for the aorta, just to distinguish them. So, with that completed, we can start putting in some labels. We'll start with the left ventricle. And then we can put in the left atrium. We can put in the right atrium. And we'll need to draw a line to it. We have the aorta. We have the three branches from the arch of the aorta, the brachiocephalic artery. We have the left common carotid artery. And we have the left subclavian artery. We have the left pulmonary artery. And we'll draw a line. We have the right pulmonary artery. Again, we'll draw a line. And then the structure that gives rise to the pulmonary arteries is the pulmonary trunk, and I'll abbreviate that PT. Like so. We have the superior vena cava, and we have the inferior vena cava. Then we have the pulmonary veins. And remember that there are 4 of those, and I will draw a line to each one. And the last structure I need to label is the Ligamentum Arteriosum. And that, as I mentioned earlier, is a ligamentous structure running between the arch of the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and it is a remnant of a vessel, the ductus arteriosus, that is open in the fetus, but after birth it closes off and becomes this ligament. In the next slide, we're going to look at the posterior inferior view of the heart. Now, looking at the posterior inferior surface of the heart, we'll start by drawing in the ventricle or the ventricles. And we'll see in this area the left atrium, we'll have superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and a little bit of right atrium visible. And let me draw dividing lines between the vena cava and the atrium. Touch this up just a little bit here. We'll see that there is an interventricular groove on this side as well. It's again uneven. It's mostly left ventricle, very little of the right. Let me draw in cut pulmonary veins here, and then we would see a little bit of the aorta peeking out right here, and a little bit of the pulmonary trunk just anterior to it. Let me color this in so that we can see what's happening here. Again, the atria will be in pink. The superior and inferior vena cava will be in blue. The pulmonary veins will be in red. The aorta will be a slightly darker red. And the pulmonary trunk will be in a light purple. And then we'll put the ventricles in brown. So, with the coloring done, let's add labels. So, this is the left ventricle. This is the right ventricle. Up here is the left atrium. I'll just indicate it by the initials, LA. Over here is the right atrium. Indicated by the RA. In blue up here we have the superior vena cava, SVC. Down here we'll have the inferior vena cava, IVC. The aorta. Here. And up here we'll have the pulmonary trunk, which I'll abbreviate PT. We will have an atrioventricular groove, and we'll draw a line to it, and we'll have an interventricular groove. And draw a line to it. Now these are the major structures on the posterior inferior view of the heart. Realize that the inferior surface of the heart is actually resting on the diaphragm. So that surface of the heart basically conforms to the shape of the diaphragm, so it'll be slightly concave. That concludes our discussion of the external structures of the heart. Thank you for your attention.